The scream of tortured metal echoed through the hidden corridors of New Seoul as another test chamber sealed itself permanently. Commander Lee Day watched through reinforced glass as the containment field collapsed, taking with it 3 months of research and the last functional prototype of their quantum disruptor array. Behind him, Dr. Kim Nari cursed in 3 languages, her hands flying over diagnostic screens that painted everything in shades of catastrophic failure. "That's the 7th containment breach this month," Lee Day said, his voice carrying the exhaustion of a man who had slept 4 hours in the past week. "At this rate, we'll run out of test chambers before we run out of theories." Nari pulled off her safety goggles, revealing eyes bloodshot from staring at quantum field equations that shouldn't exist according to human physics. "The energy discharge is too unstable. Every time we get close to the resonance frequency that disrupts their neural quantum interface, the feedback loop destroys our equipment." She gestured at the smoking remains visible through the blast shield. "It's like trying to create lightning in a paper box." 3 years. 3 years since the Celestial Dominion had announced humanity's verdict with the casual indifference of gods swatting insects. Lee Day remembered that day with crystalline clarity. The massive ships appearing in Earth's sky without warning, their hulls gleaming with technology that bent light around impossible angles. The beings that emerged claimed to be the rightful rulers of the galaxy, ancient entities who had transcended mortality itself. They spoke of humanity as one might discuss bacteria, interesting perhaps, but ultimately disposable. The lucky ones had been enslaved. The unlucky ones had simply been vaporized when they showed insufficient deference to their new divine overlords. "Sir?" came a voice from the observation deck above. Engineer Yang Ho descended the metal stairs, his tablet displaying readings. That made Nari lean forward with sudden interest. "The energy signature from that last failure. I think we've been approaching this wrong." Lee Day raised an eyebrow. Yang Ho was brilliant, but he had the annoying habit of speaking in riddles. When excited, elaborate. "We've been trying to disrupt their quantum field externally, like jamming a radio signal. But look at these readings." Yang Ho swiped through screens of data, each one showing the moments before containment failure. Right before the equipment overloads, there's a brief period where the field actually stabilizes. What if we're not supposed to disrupt the connection? What if we're supposed to sever it completely? Nari's eyes widened as she processed the implications. A quantum scalpel. Instead of a quantum hammer, she began pulling up her own data, cross-referencing Yang Ho's readings with her biological studies of captured Dominion specimens. "Yang Ho, you beautiful genius. I think you're onto something." The research had begun with corpses. 3 Dominion soldiers, killed during humanity's first and last pitched battle against their new overlords. Dr. Kim Nari had spent months dissecting beings that appeared humanoid, but whose biology defied every principle of terrestrial evolution. Their brains contained structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Neural networks that interfaced directly with quantum fields in ways that allowed them to manipulate matter and energy through thought alone. It had taken Nari 6 months to realize she wasn't looking at advanced evolution, she was looking at artificial enhancement. The gods of the Celestial Dominion had once been mortal, but they had rebuilt themselves at the quantum level, transcending the Yaoriki. Limitations of flesh through technology so advanced it appeared magical to lesser species. But every enhancement created a vulnerability. "Run the simulation again," Lee Day ordered, watching as Yang Ho's fingers danced across holographic controls. "Show me what happens if we focus the disruption field into a coherent beam instead of an area effect." The holographic display flickered to life, showing a 3-dimensional model of a Dominion neural network. The quantum pathways pulsed with ethereal light, depicting the flow of consciousness through enhanced synapses that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Yang Ho activated the simulated weapon, and instead of the chaotic energy burst that had destroyed their previous attempts, a focused beam of null quantum energy sliced through the connections like a sword through silk. The model Dominion brain went dark. Theoretical weapon effectiveness, 97%, the computer announced in its maddeningly calm voice. Warning, Unknown consequences of complete quantum field severance in enhanced biological systems. Nari laughed, a sound bordering on hysteria. Unknown consequences? Yang Ho, if this works, the consequence is that their gods become mortal again. Mortal and very, very killable. 6 weeks later, the first null-class weapon was loaded into the belly of a modified human stealth ship. Captain Park Jin stood in the cramped armory, examining the device that represented humanity's desperate gamble. It looked disappointingly mundane, a rifle-sized apparatus of brushed metal and crystal focusing arrays connected to a backpack power source that hummed with barely contained energy. "One shot," Nari explained, her voice tight with the knowledge that 3 years of work had led to this single moment. "The capacitors can only hold enough charge for one discharge before they need a full hour to recycle. Miss, and you'll be facing an angry god with conventional weapons." Park Jin hefted the weapon, testing its weight and balance with the casual expertise of a man who had been killing things professionally for most of his adult life. His face remained impassive, but Li Day caught the slight smile that touched the corners of his mouth. Park Jin had volunteered for the mission with an eagerness that had made several committee members uncomfortable. "What's our target?" Park Jin asked. "Mining station Kepler 442b, Li Day replied, pulling up the tactical display. "Intelligence indicates a Dominion overseer named Veltar is personally supervising the extraction of rare earth elements. Minor deity by their standards, but still functionally immortal and capable of reshaping matter through directed thought. He's been using human slaves to dig the tunnels because he finds their suffering amusing." Something cold flickered in Park Jin's eyes. "How many humans on the station?" "Approximately 2,000 workers, all of them scheduled for termination once the ore extraction is complete." Li Day paused, studying the captain's expression. "This is a combat mission, Park Jin. Rescue is secondary to field testing the weapon." "Understood, sir." Park Jin's voice carried no emotion, but his grip on the null weapon tightened slightly. "When do we deploy?" The mining station hung in space, like a metallic cancer, its twisted spires and impossible geometries defying human understanding of engineering. Dominion architecture seemed designed to remind lesser species of their inadequacy. Every angle was wrong, every surface reflected light in ways that hurt to look at directly. Park Jin's team approached in a captured Dominion shuttle, their human life signs masked by quantum scramblers that Yang Ho had cobbled together from salvaged equipment. Through the viewports, they could see human figures moving in the station's lower levels, their movements slow and mechanical with exhaustion. "Veltar's located in the central spire," whispered Sergeant Kim Bo, the team's reconnaissance specialist. "Thermal imaging shows a massive energy signature consistent with an enhanced Dominion consciousness. He's alone, probably doesn't consider humans threatening enough to warrant guards." Park Jin checked the null weapon one final time, then looked at his team. "Remember, we're making history today. 3 years ago, the galaxy learned that gods exist. Today, the galaxy learns that gods can die." The infiltration went smoothly until they reached the central spire. Veltar waited for them in a chamber that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions, its walls covered with holographic displays showing the suffering of a dozen enslaved species. The Dominion overseer stood 3 meters tall, his form shifting between solid matter and pure energy as his enhanced consciousness interfaced with the station systems. "How curious," Veltar said, his voice resonating directly inside their skulls. "Insects have learned to sneak. Have you come to beg for mercy, little creatures? I'm afraid your species' reprieve has ended. Tomorrow I begin the amusing task of watching your kind die slowly." Park Jin raised the null weapon without ceremony. "Actually, we came to kill you." Veltar's laughter shook the chamber, reality rippling around him as his amusement manifested as gravitational waves. "Kill me? I have existed for 6,000 of your years, little insect. I have watched stars die and civilizations crumble to dust. What could something as brief and fragile as—" The null beam struck him mid-sentence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Veltar's expression changed from amused condescension to confusion, then to horror as he felt his quantum enhancements severing one by one. His towering form began to shrink, his control over matter and energy flickering like a dying flame. The crystalline halls of the diplomatic station neutral ground had been built by the long-extinct precursors, its walls designed to inspire awe and encourage peaceful resolution. Today, those same walls witnessed something unprecedented, a god, nervously adjusting his ceremonial robes. Supreme Overlord Vexithera had ruled the celestial dominion for over 3 millennia, his name whispered in terror across 47 star systems. He had personally overseen the extinction of entire species, watching civilizations burn with the same detached interest that others might observe a sunset. Yet as he prepared for his first face-to-face meeting with human representatives, something resembling anxiety flickered through his enhanced consciousness. Veltar's death had changed everything. The impossible had become reality, and Vexithara found himself in the unfamiliar position of facing an enemy that could actually threaten him. "The human delegation has arrived, Supreme One," announced War Commander Silneth, her voice carrying the mechanical precision of perfect loyalty. "Shall we proceed with the standard intimidation protocols?" Vexithara studied the tactical displays showing the approaching human shuttle. Small, crude by Dominion standards, yet it carried beings who had accomplished what no species had managed in recorded galactic history. "No," he said finally. "I want to see these god-killers up close, observe their behavior, understand what makes them different." Ambassador Choi Min stepped off the shuttle with the practiced calm of a diplomat who had negotiated with beings capable of cracking planets. His small entourage followed, 3 aides, 2 technical specialists, and 1 bodyguard whose presence had been specifically requested by the Dominion delegation. Captain Park Jin moved with the fluid economy of a predator, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with professional paranoia. The meeting chamber was a sphere of impossible beauty, its walls displaying the swirling cosmos in real time. At its center sat Vexithara, his form shifting between humanoid appearance and something far more alien. When he chose to manifest physically, he appeared as a tall, elegant figure with skin that seemed to contain entire star systems. His eyes, holding the depth of cosmic void. "Welcome, humans." Vexithara's voice resonated with harmonics that spoke directly to the primitive brainstem, triggering instinctive submission responses. "I am Supreme Overlord Vexithara, Shepherd of Worlds, he who determines the fate of species. Ambassador." Choi Min bowed with precisely calculated respect, enough to show courtesy, not enough to show submission. "Your supremacy honors us with this meeting. I am Ambassador Choi Min, representing the Terran Coalition. This is my staff and my security advisor, Captain Park Jin." Vexithara's gaze settled on Park Jin with the intensity of a stellar collapse. For a moment that stretched toward eternity, 2 apex predators studied each other across the species divide. Where others might have seen a routine diplomatic bodyguard, Vexithara recognized something that sent unexpected thrills through his ancient consciousness. "Interesting," Vexithara murmured, his attention focused entirely on Park Jin. "Tell me, Captain, how many beings have you killed?" The question violated every diplomatic protocol, but Park Jin answered without hesitation. "Enough to know that everyone dies the same way, regardless of what they call themselves." A smile played across Vexithara's lips, not the condescending expression he typically wore when dealing with lesser species, but something genuine and delighted. "Indeed. And do you enjoy it? The killing?" Ambassador Choi Min tensed, recognizing the dangerous territory they were entering. "Your supremacy. Perhaps we should focus on the terms." "I find it necessary," Park Jin interrupted, his eyes never leaving Vexithara's. "Some situations require permanent solutions. Some beings forfeit their right to continue existing." Vexithara leaned forward, his cosmic form solidifying with interest. "Ah, but do you find it satisfying? The moment when life leaves their eyes? The final understanding that their supposed importance was merely delusion?" "Sometimes," Park Jin replied with the matter-of-fact tone one might use to discuss the weather. "Depends on whether they deserved it." The admission hung in the air like a blade. Ambassador Choi Min felt sweat beading on his forehead as he realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. Two natural killers recognizing each other across the vast gulf of species and circumstance. Your supremacy, Choi Min tried again. We're here to discuss the cessation of hostilities. Silence. Vexthara's command carried the weight of divine authority, but his attention remained fixed on Park Jin. Captain, walk with me. I wish to speak privately with someone who might understand certain perspectives. The private chamber was smaller, more intimate, its walls displaying scenes from Vexthara's long reign. Park Jin found himself looking at the death of worlds, the subjugation of countless species, monuments built from the bones of the defiant. Any normal being would have been horrified. Park Jin studied the displays with professional interest. Beautiful, aren't they? Vexthara asked, gesturing to a particularly artistic genocide he had orchestrated on a world whose name had been erased from galactic records. The Kelvari thought themselves cultured, sophisticated. They created poetry about the sanctity of life. I found their hypocrisy irritating. Efficient work, Park Jin observed, noting the tactical excellence of the displayed campaign. You isolated their military leadership first, then systematically dismantled their support networks. Clean. Vexthara's eyes widened with something approaching delight. Yes, exactly. So few beings appreciate the artistry involved in proper extermination. Most species view it as crude brutality, but there's genuine elegance in perfectly executed extinction. Park Jin nodded thoughtfully. The key is understanding your target, their psychology, their weaknesses, what they value most. Once you understand what makes them function, you can determine the most effective way to make them stop functioning. Precisely. Vexthara's form flickered with excitement. Do you know how many species I've personally eliminated, Captain? 43 complete. Civilizations, each one a unique challenge requiring specific solutions. The Threnari were proud warriors. I turned their own honor code against them. The Veltari were pacifists. I made them watch their children die slowly until they broke. The Morkan were individualists. I showed them that their precious personal freedom meant nothing when faced with superior force. Park Jin listened without judgment, his expression remaining carefully neutral. Psychological warfare. Target what they consider sacred. Force them to choose between their principles and their survival. You understand completely. Vexthara moved closer, his ancient consciousness practically vibrating with the joy of finding a kindred spirit. For 3 millennia, I have been surrounded by beings who fear me, worship me, or blindly obey me. But none have truly comprehended the philosophical beauty of what I represent, the necessity of apex predation in maintaining cosmic order. Someone has to make the hard choices, Park Jin agreed quietly. Someone has to be willing to cross the lines others won't cross. Vexthara studied the human captain with new intensity. Here was a being from a species he had classified as primitive insects, yet who possessed the same crystalline clarity of purpose that had driven Vexthara's rise to godhood, the same willingness to embrace necessary darkness. Tell me about Veltar's death, Vexthara said suddenly. The reports were incomplete. Park Jin's expression didn't change. He underestimated us, thought his enhancements made him invulnerable. When the null beam severed his quantum connections, he became just another target. And you felt nothing when you killed him? No remorse? No doubt? He was enslaving and torturing my species for entertainment, Park Jin replied. He had forfeited his right to exist. Killing him was simply tidying up. Vexthara was quiet for a long moment, his consciousness processing implications that disturbed his ancient certainties. He had expected to find barbarians, crude beings, who stumbled upon dangerous technology through luck rather than understanding. Instead, he had found something far more unsettling, a species that might actually deserve to survive. Your people created weapons to kill gods, Vexthara said finally. But you, Captain Park Jin, are something far more dangerous than any weapon. You are a natural-born apex predator who has learned to think strategically. Park Jin met the god's gaze without flinching. And you're a being who has lived so long that you've forgotten what it feels like to face a real threat. That makes you vulnerable. The words should have been an insult worthy of immediate vaporization. Instead, Vexthara laughed, a sound of genuine amusement that echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. Vulnerable, he repeated, tasting the unfamiliar concept. Do you know, Captain? It has been over 2,000 years since anyone dared suggest such a thing to my face. Most would have been reduced to component atoms for the presumption. Most aren't armed with null weapons, Park Jin observed. Vexthara's smile widened. Indeed. Which brings us to the heart of the matter. Your species has upset the natural order of things. You have made gods mortal again. The question becomes, what do we do about this fascinating development? War Master Krylon had built his reputation on decisive action and unwavering loyalty to the Dominion's cause. Standing in the command center of the dreadnought Divine Retribution, he watched the tactical displays with growing frustration. 3 weeks had passed since Supreme Overlord Vexthara's diplomatic meeting with the humans, and still no orders had come for their extermination. The Supreme One grows contemplative, muttered Sub-Commander Telvak, his tone carefully neutral. Perhaps the humans' god-killing demonstration has given him pause. Krylon's mandibles clicked in irritation. Pause? We are the Celestial Dominion. We do not pause for insects regardless of their crude weapons. He gestured to the star charts showing human settlements scattered across 17 systems. Every moment we delay gives them time to prepare, to spread their heretical technology. Through the viewport, Krylon could see the industrial world of Kepler 186F, its surface crawling with human mining operations that fed the rebellion's war machine. The sight filled him with contempt. Lesser species always believed they could build their way to equality, as if superior engineering could compensate for inferior evolution. Sub-Commander, Krylon said suddenly, his decision crystallizing with military precision. Prepare the fleet for immediate deployment. We will demonstrate to the humans, and to any who might question our resolve, that the Dominion's patience has limits. Telvak hesitated. War Master, shouldn't we await orders from the Supreme One? I am following orders, Krylon replied, coldly. Standing orders to maintain Dominion supremacy through whatever means necessary. The Supreme One will thank me once these insects are properly exterminated. The attack came without warning at 0347 hours local time. Captain Park Jin was reviewing tactical reports in his temporary quarters aboard the human carrier Soul's Pride when the proximity alarms began screaming. Through the reinforced viewport, he watched 3 human colonies die in the span of minutes. New Busan went first, an agricultural world home to 2 million civilians. The Dominion fleet emerged from quantum space directly above the planet's capital, their weapons charged and ready. Park Jin watched through long-range sensors as the city's defensive grid activated, humanity's most advanced shields blazing to life around population centers. It lasted exactly 47 seconds. The Divine Retribution's main cannon fired once, a beam of concentrated divine energy that punched through planetary shields like tissue paper. New Busan's capital city simply ceased to exist, replaced by a crater that glowed with residual quantum fire. The planet's remaining population had 19 minutes to contemplate their fate before the orbital bombardment began in earnest. New Incheon and New Daegu died even faster. Krylon's fleet had refined their tactics with each world, turning genocide into an efficient industrial process. By the time human rescue ships arrived, they found only scorched worlds and the scattered debris of 3 human colonies. Park Jin stood in the observation deck of Soul's Pride, watching the tactical replay with the detached focus of a professional analyzing enemy capabilities. Around him, other human officers wept or raged or stood in stunned silence. Park Jin simply calculated. Casualty report, he said quietly. Lieutenant Commander Yu Jin-A, the ship's intelligence officer, consulted her datapad with trembling hands. 7,400,000 confirmed dead. No survivors recovered from any of the 3 worlds. Her voice cracked. Sir, New Busan was my home system. My parents— I understand, Park Jin interrupted, his tone carrying neither sympathy nor impatience, just simple acknowledgement. Continue the briefing. Admiral Han Kyung, the fleet's commanding officer, stared at Park Jin with something approaching horror. "Captain, we've just witnessed the largest mass murder in human history. And you want a briefing?" Park Jin turned to face the Admiral, his expression calm as winter ice. "Admiral, we've just received definitive proof that diplomatic solutions are no longer viable. The enemy has escalated to total war. Our response must be proportionate. The key." Communication from Commander Lee Day arrived 6 hours later, transmitted through quantum-encrypted channels to avoid Dominion interception. Park Jin read the message twice, his expression never changing, then requested a private meeting with Admiral Han Kyung. "The High Command is authorizing total response protocol," Park Jin announced without preamble. "All limitations on strategic operations are hereby lifted. We are cleared to implement any and all tactics necessary to achieve victory." Han Kyung studied the authorization codes, his face growing pale as he realized the implications. "Park Jin, this essentially gives you carte blanche to wage war however you see fit. Are you certain you want this level of responsibility?" "Want it?" Park Jin's smile was sharp as a blade. "Admiral, I've been waiting my entire career for someone to give me permission to fight a war properly. No rules of engagement, no concern for political ramifications, no limits on acceptable casualties." He gestured toward the tactical displays, showing Dominion fleet positions. "They just killed 7 million of our people to make a point. I intend to respond in kind." Engineer Yang Ho arrived aboard Seoul's Pride 18 hours later, his transport ship's cargo bay filled with enough null weapons to equip 3 full battle groups. He found Park Jin in the ship's war room, surrounded by holographic displays, showing detailed schematics of Dominion vessels, infrastructure, and known weaknesses. "Captain," Yang Ho said, setting down a reinforced case containing the latest weapon prototypes. "I've brought the new portable null generators. They're smaller, faster to recharge, and we've managed to increase the effective range by 30%. Park Jin examined the weapons with professional interest. "Deployment time? We can have your special operations teams equipped within 12 hours. The regular fleet weapons will take longer. We're talking about retrofitting 17 capital ships and 43 destroyers with technology that didn't exist 6 months ago." "Make it happen," Park Jin ordered. "And Yang Ho, I want you to personally oversee the installation of null weapons on every piece of military hardware we possess. Fighters, bombers, even the maintenance drones. If it flies and can mount a weapon, I want it capable of killing gods." Dr. Kim Nari's latest research breakthrough arrived via secure transmission 2 days later. Park Jin studied the technical specifications with growing satisfaction as he realized the implications of her work. "A null cascade bomb," he murmured, reviewing the weapon's theoretical capabilities. "Designed to strip quantum enhancements from entire fleets simultaneously." The device was elegant in its simplicity, a focused quantum disruption field that could be deployed as a mine, fired as a missile, or detonated manually. Any Dominion vessel caught within its effect radius would find their godlike technology reduced to mundane metal and circuits. Park Jin immediately authorized full production, then began planning the first field deployment. Krylon's fleet was currently occupying the ruins of New Busan, using the destroyed world as a forward base for operations against human shipping lanes. The War Master had made himself a convenient target. The transformation of Seoul's Pride and her escort vessels took 5 days. Human engineers worked around the clock, integrating null weapons into every available weapons mount and replacing conventional ammunition with quantum-disrupting alternatives. Park Jin insisted on personally testing each system, his methodical approach ensuring that every weapon would function perfectly when the time came. "Sir," Lieutenant Commander Yu Jin-A approached Park Jin as he reviewed the final equipment manifest. "I've been analyzing Dominion tactical doctrine based on their recent attacks. They rely heavily on their technological superiority and the psychological impact of their divine status. If we can neutralize both advantages simultaneously, they become just another enemy fleet," Park Jin finished, "made up of beings who have never faced a real threat, commanded by leaders who mistake fear for respect." He looked up from his datapad, his eyes holding the cold light of anticipated violence. "Jin-A, I want you to coordinate with intelligence assets throughout the sector. I need complete tactical information on every Dominion vessel, every commander, every weakness we can exploit." "Yes, sir. And Captain?" Eugene hesitated. "My analysis suggests that Supreme Overlord Vexithara was not involved in ordering these attacks. The tactical patterns match War Master Krylon's historical methods." Park Jin's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. "Interesting. So Krylon acted without direct authorization, probably hoping to present Vexithara with a fait accompli." He considered the implications. That suggests discord within Dominion leadership. File that information under opportunities to exploit. The final piece of Park Jin's preparations came in the form of recruitment. He issued a fleet-wide call for volunteers, specifically requesting personnel who had lost family or friends in the recent attacks. The response was overwhelming. Nearly every human in the fleet had personal reasons to want revenge against the Dominion. The Dominion fortress of Eternal Vigil had never fallen in its 800-year history. Built within the hollowed core of a massive asteroid, its quantum-reinforced walls and divine energy shields made it theoretically impregnable. War Master. Krylon had chosen it as his primary base specifically because its reputation would demoralize any force foolish enough to attack it. Captain Park Jin studied the fortress through the tactical display aboard Soul's Pride, noting defensive positions, with the professional interest of a surgeon examining a patient. Around him, the human fleet hung in space like a constellation of vengeance. 17 capital ships, 43 destroyers, and over 200 support vessels, all bristling with null weapons that could strip gods of their immortality. "Intelligence, assessment complete," reported Lieutenant Commander Eugene, her voice carrying the focused calm of someone who had channeled grief into purpose. "The fortress houses approximately 300 Dominion personnel, including 12 minor deities, and War Master Krylon himself. Current defensive status shows full shields and all weapon systems online." Admiral Han Kyung frowned at the tactical display. "Those shields can deflect anything in our conventional arsenal. Even our new null weapons might not penetrate them. In a direct assault." Park Jin's smile was sharp as a blade. "Admiral, we're not going to assault their defenses. We're going to make them irrelevant." He gestured to Engineer Yang Ho, who activated a holographic projection showing the fortress's internal structure. "Yang Ho, explain our approach." Yang Ho manipulated the display, highlighting specific sections of the asteroid base. The fortress was built by beings who think in terms of divine invulnerability. They designed it to withstand external attacks, but they never considered the possibility of internal sabotage. He zoomed in on the fortress's power core. "If we can get a null cascade bomb into their central reactor chamber, the quantum disruption will propagate through their entire power grid. Their shields and weapons will fail simultaneously," Park Jin continued. "More importantly, every enhanced Dominion being inside will find themselves suddenly mortal and vulnerable to conventional weapons. The question is delivery." The answer came from an unexpected source. Sergeant Kimbo, the reconnaissance specialist who had participated in the original mission to kill Veltar, stepped forward with a proposal that would have seemed suicidal to anyone who didn't understand human psychology. "Sir, I volunteer to infiltrate the fortress using a captured Dominion shuttle. Once inside, I can plant the cascade bomb and transmit the detonation signal." Kimbo's expression was calm, professional. "The mission has a 90% fatality probability, but success is achievable." Park Jin studied the sergeant with genuine respect. "Explain your reasoning." "The Dominion believes themselves superior to all other species. They won't expect a primitive human to penetrate their security through sheer audacity. Their arrogance is their weakness. They can't conceive of beings they consider inferior acting with such precision and determination." Admiral Han Kyung looked horrified. "That's a suicide mission, Sergeant. We can't ask you to—" "You're not asking, sir," Kimbo interrupted. "I'm volunteering. They killed my sister on New Busan. This is personal." Park Jin nodded slowly. "Approved. Yang Ho, prepare the cascade bomb for covert deployment. Jinne, Brief Sergeant Kimbo on fortress layout and security protocols. We attack in 6 hours. The infiltration succeeded beyond their most optimistic projections. Kimbo's captured shuttle passed through the fortress's defensive perimeter without challenge, the Dominion guards unable to conceive that a human would dare approach their stronghold directly. By the time Kimbo reached the power core chamber, planted the cascade bomb, and transmitted the activation signal, the Dominion forces were still completely unaware of the threat. The null cascade detonation lit up space like a dying star. Every quantum field within the fortress collapsed simultaneously, ancient technology failing as divine enhancements simply ceased to function. Emergency lighting flickered as backup systems struggled to compensate for the complete failure of Dominion technology. All ships, commence attack. Park Jin ordered with the calm certainty of a man implementing a plan that had been months in the making. Target the fortress's weapon emplacements first, then begin systematic hull penetration. Remember, they're mortal now. The human fleet struck with precision that shocked even their own crews. Null-enhanced missiles punched through shields that no longer existed, while specially modified plasma cannons burned through walls that had once been reinforced by divine will. Within minutes, Eternal Vigil was transformed from an impregnable fortress into a burning tomb. War Master Krylon found himself experiencing mortality for the first time in 3 centuries. Stripped of his quantum enhancements, he was reduced to his base biological form, still formidable, but no longer a god. He watched his fortress burn around him with the growing realization that he had fundamentally misjudged his human opponents. Evacuation. Protocols are failing, reported his aide, Sub-Commander Telvac, who was likewise discovering the unfamiliar sensation of genuine vulnerability. The humans have targeted our escape route specifically. They're not trying to capture the fortress, they're trying to eliminate everyone inside. Krylon's mandibles clicked in what might have been respect or terror. They're not conducting a military operation. They're conducting an extermination. He looked around the command center, noting how quickly his divine officers had adapted to mortality's limitations. Signal surrender. Perhaps we can negotiate. The command center's main screen flared to life, showing Captain Park Jin's face with crystalline clarity. His expression held no mercy, no interest in negotiation, only the cold satisfaction of a hunter closing in on wounded prey. War Master Krylon, Park Jin said, his voice carrying clearly through the fortress's dying communication systems. You murdered 7 million of my people to make a statement about Dominion superiority. I'm about to respond with a statement of my own. Captain, Krylon began, his voice carrying none of its former divine authority. Perhaps we can reach an understanding. The only understanding we need, Park Jin interrupted, is that gods bleed just like everyone else when you cut them properly. The human boarding parties arrived with surgical precision, cutting through the fortress's hull using tools specifically designed to penetrate Dominion architecture. They moved through the corridors like efficient death, eliminating resistance with the methodical thoroughness of extermination specialists. Park Jin led the assault on the command center personally, accompanied by a strike team equipped with weapons that turned former gods into merely exotic corpses. The fighting was brief and entirely one-sided. Beings who had ruled through divine authority for centuries had no experience with actual combat against determined opponents. War Master, Krylon died with a human knife between his ribs, his last sight being Park Jin's face watching him with clinical interest. The War Master's final words were a whispered question. What are you? Human, Park Jin replied simply, watching the light fade from eyes that had once held the fire of artificial divinity. News of Eternal Vigil's fall spread through both human resistance networks and Dominion communication channels with the speed of quantum transmission. The fortress that had never fallen had been destroyed by humans in less than 4 hours. More shocking than the military victory was the casualty report. 300 Dominion personnel dead, 0 survivors. Commander Lee Day received Park Jin's after-action report with grim satisfaction. The message was concise and professional. Eternal Vigil eliminated. All enemy personnel neutralized. Fortress stripped for useful technology. Proceeding to next target. Across human space, resistance cells that had hidden in shadows for 3 years began emerging into the light. Hidden weapons caches were opened, revealing stockpiles of null technology that had been secretly manufactured and distributed. Dr. Kim Nari's research had been shared with every human settlement, allowing local engineers to produce god-killing weapons using readily available materials. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as what was supposed to be humanity's extinction became the largest slave revolt in recorded history. Species that had submitted to Dominion rule for millennia saw footage of dead gods and began to remember what freedom felt like. On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Park Jin studied tactical displays showing Dominion forces throughout the sector. They were in disarray, their commanders struggling to adapt to facing an enemy that could actually threaten them. For the first time in galactic history, the immortal gods of the Celestial Dominion were experiencing fear. "Sir, Lieutenant Commander," Yu Jin-A approached with the latest intelligence reports. "We're receiving communication requests from 17 different species asking for null weapon technology. The rebellion is spreading faster than Dominion forces can respond." Park Jin nodded with satisfaction. "Approve all requests. Ensure that every species receives enough weapons to eliminate their local Dominion overseers." He paused, considering the broader implications. "Jin-A, prepare a message for transmission to Supreme Overlord Vex Thara." The dreadnought Divine Supremacy hung in space like a monument to cosmic arrogance, its kilometers-long hull crackling with energy that bent reality around its edges. It was Supreme Overlord Vex Thara's personal flagship, a vessel that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. Today it would witness something unprecedented, the death of its god captain at the hands of mortals. Captain Park Jin stood in the cramped confines of a human assault shuttle, surrounded by 30 volunteers, who had earned their place through demonstrated excellence in killing supposedly immortal beings. In the 3 months since Eternal Vigil's destruction, they had eliminated 47 Dominion strongholds and over 2,000 divine personnel. Each victory had taught them new ways to turn gods into corpses. "Final approach in 90 seconds, announced pilot Li Sang, his voice steady despite the fact that they were flying directly toward a being who could theoretically unmake them with a thought. "Null scramblers are holding. They still can't detect our approach." Park Jin checked his equipment one last time. The latest generation of null weapons had been refined through months of field testing against divine targets. The rifle in his hands could strip quantum enhancements from a target at 500 meters, while the cascade charges strapped to his vest could neutralize an entire ship's worth of gods if properly deployed. "Remember," Park Jin addressed his team, "Vex Thara is different from the others. He's ancient, experienced, and he's been expecting us. Don't assume his mortality makes him harmless. Mortal doesn't mean easy to kill." The shuttle penetrated Divine Supremacy's hull through a maintenance port that engineer Yang Ho had identified during his analysis of captured Dominion vessels. The boarding operation proceeded with the silent efficiency of apex predators infiltrating enemy territory. Resistance was minimal. Vex Thara had apparently dismissed most of his crew, choosing to face his human nemesis with only a skeleton guard. Park Jin found Vex Thara waiting in the ship's command cathedral, a vast chamber designed to inspire awe in lesser beings. The Supreme Overlord stood at its center, his form no longer shifting between matter and energy but locked into solid flesh by null scramblers hidden throughout the ship. For the first time in 3 millennia, Vex Thara was completely mortal. "Captain, Park Jin," Vex Thara said, his voice carrying genuine warmth despite their circumstances. "I wondered when you would come for me personally. After Krylon's death, after the systematic elimination of my commanders, I knew this moment was inevitable." Park Jin approached slowly, his null rifle trained on the former god but not yet fired. Around them, the chamber's walls displayed scenes from Vex Thara's long reign, the conquest of worlds, the subjugation of species, the careful cultivation of absolute power across the galaxy. "You're not what I expected," Park Jin admitted, studying Vex Thara's surprisingly calm demeanor. "Most of your kind react to mortality with panic or rage. You seem accepting." Vexithara laughed, a sound of genuine amusement that echoed through the cathedral. Do you know what I've been doing these past months while you systematically dismantled my empire? I've been thinking, for the first time in centuries, genuine philosophical contemplation rather than simple administrative oversight. And what conclusions did you reach? That you were right, of course. Vexithara gestured to the displays around them. I had grown complacent, surrounded by beings who feared me so completely that they forgot to challenge my assumptions. You and your species reminded me of something I had lost, the thrill of facing genuine opposition. Park Jin kept his weapon ready but found himself genuinely curious about this ancient being's perspective. Is that why you disbanded your personal guard? To make this easier? Partly, Vexithara acknowledged, but also because I wanted to make you an offer. Your species has demonstrated something remarkable, the ability to systematically overcome seemingly impossible odds through strategic thinking and absolute determination. I would like to propose a partnership. The offer hung in the air like a blade. Park Jin studied Vexithara's expression, searching for deception or desperation. Instead, he found something that looked disturbingly like genuine respect. What kind of partnership? Vexithara's smile was sharp with anticipation. Joint rule of the galaxy, Captain. Your tactical genius combined with my administrative experience. We could rebuild the Dominion as something better. A true meritocracy where power flows to those capable of wielding it effectively, regardless of species. Park Jin considered the proposal with the same analytical focus he brought to military planning. It was, he had to admit, a strategically sound offer. Vexithara possessed knowledge and experience that could prove invaluable in governing a galactic civilization. And the species you've enslaved? The worlds you've destroyed? Regrettable necessities of maintaining order, Vexithara replied without apparent remorse. But under our joint leadership, such crude methods would be unnecessary. Your people have proven that motivation through respect is more effective than motivation through fear. Park Jin nodded slowly, as if genuinely considering the offer. Then he smiled with cold satisfaction and triggered the hidden null bomb concealed in his equipment harness. The quantum disruption field expanded outward from Park Jin's position, washing over Vexithara like invisible fire. The Supreme Overlord's expression shifted from confident negotiation to shocked realization as his remaining enhancements were stripped away, leaving him completely, vulnerably mortal. You anticipated my offer, Vexithara said, his voice carrying something like admiration even as he realized he had been outmaneuvered. I've spent months studying your psychological profile, Park Jin replied, drawing a conventional sidearm. You're a predator who respects other predators. I knew you'd try to recruit me rather than simply fight me. It's what I would have done in your position. Vexithara straightened with dignity, accepting his fate with the composure of someone who had lived for millennia. And if I had offered to simply surrender? To stand trial for my crimes? I would have shot you immediately, Park Jin answered, honestly. At least this way you get to die with the illusion that you had options. The former Supreme Overlord laughed one final time. You know, Captain, in another universe, we might have been excellent partners. Your capacity for strategic thinking combined with moral pragmatism is truly impressive. Maybe, Park Jin agreed, but in this universe you're a genocidal monster who has forfeited his right to exist. Park Jin fired 3 times center mass. Vexithara collapsed with the simple finality of mortality, his ancient consciousness extinguished like any other biological function. The being who had ruled a galaxy for 3,000 years died on the deck of his own flagship, killed by a human who had lived less than 40 of those years. The news of Vexithara's death spread through the galaxy with unprecedented speed. On 1,000 worlds, slave species rose in rebellion as their divine overseers fell to human-supplied null weapons. The celestial dominion, which had seemed eternal just months before, crumbled with shocking rapidity as its foundational mythology, the invincibility of gods, was proven false. Commander Li Day received Park Jin's final report from the bridge of Soul's Pride, now serving as the flagship of humanity's expanding liberation fleet. The message was characteristically brief. Vexthara eliminated. Dominion command structure collapsed. Galactic rebellion proceeding ahead of schedule. Dr. Kim Nari found herself in the unexpected position of leading technical assistance missions to newly liberated worlds. Her null weapon technology had become the galaxy's most requested export, with species that had submitted to divine rule for centuries, eagerly learning to kill their former gods. The psychological impact has been extraordinary, Nari reported during a council meeting aboard the diplomatic station New Hope. Simply knowing that gods can die has fundamentally altered how these species view power structures. They're not just overthrowing their local oppressors, they're questioning the entire concept of divine authority. Engineer Yang Ho nodded from his position at the technical console. We're receiving requests for assistance from species we've never even heard of. Word is spreading faster than we can respond to it. The rebellion has become self-sustaining. Ambassador Choi Min reviewed the latest diplomatic reports with growing concern, which brings us to the central question: what comes next? We've successfully destroyed the Dominion, but nature abhors a power vacuum. If we're not careful, we could find ourselves responsible for governing a galaxy. The question hung in the air like an unexploded bomb. Humanity had successfully accomplished the impossible. They had killed gods and toppled an eternal empire. But victory had brought unexpected complications. Hundreds of species were looking to humanity for leadership, protection, and guidance in building new civilizations. Park Jin, now bearing the unofficial title of Supreme Commander of Liberation Forces, found himself faced with decisions that would shape galactic civilization for generations. In his private quarters aboard Sol's Pride, he studied intelligence reports that painted a complex picture of opportunity and danger.